So let me get going with that sort of an as an introduction, and with COVID, and let me talk about the elephant in the room. There is a bit of a slowdown. A lot of us, if not all of us, have faced some kind of disruption in our businesses, right? On the left hand side of the page, these are some classic responses that have happened every time an economic downturn has occurred, right? And these are from organizations large and small. This is a summary of things that typical businesses, companies do when they are hit with any kind of economic crisis. The first is obviously, go back to your core, right? If you were in the process of diversification, either in terms of revenue or markets or channels or products, go back to what you were doing as a fundamental. So protect your core, right? um, the second is start rethinking, if you're not already, around what kind of alliances do you have, what partnerships, who's your supplier, who's your vendor, are you getting the best bang out of your buck in terms of each of these strategic partnerships and alliances. Third is around, and again, that's probably, it goes without saying, but use technology, right? A lot of our businesses, and I think, again, Tushar, sorry, but going back to your company's example, can we deploy softwares? Can we deploy systems that can perhaps save us as human beings from doing busy work, right? And every time I say busy work, I really mean things that actually don't need human intervention, things that can very well, tracking of finances, I think was being discussed earlier, things that very well can be done by a software with some kind of limited human oversight. But that's about it. We don't need a person to be there hands on 24/7 to be able to do that work. So I think a lot of companies, and I know this might sound a bit counterintuitive, but a lot of companies, when crisis comes, see it as an opportunity, right? And like they say, never let a crisis go waste. So if there is a crisis, make sure you use it, right? And right now, especially with COVID, the way people are using this crisis is by saying, hang on, let's just take that big step back and say, where is it that we can perhaps digitize ourselves to become smarter, right? To become more efficient. Um, on the people side, I think, again, one of the things that has started happening, and not that it wasn't happening before COVID, but companies are looking at understanding not what kind of people they need. And Tushar, as you think through your CFO hiring, think about what skills you want from this person, right? And again, a lot of us fall in this trap of job description and position description. Here are your roles and responsibilities, here are the accountabilities of a CFO or what have you, and then we never kind of hire a person for the skills he or she may have. We hire a person for the job we want them to do. And this is a huge shift, right? It's a huge shift in the way we think about skills, right? And with future of work, fourth industrial revolution, all these sorts of good things, the key lesson is look ahead, right? Because for some sectors, the future is already here. For some sectors, the future is coming. Some sectors have been forced and pushed into the future because of COVID, right? So if I think about education, which is the sector I now am focusing on, a lot of universities, schools, colleges, public sector, governments, everybody has been pushed towards digital transformation, right? So, which means that remain ready by having future skills in your workforce as opposed to having them do a job in the present. And then lastly, think about your, from a financial standpoint, think about restructuring of your investments. Is your money making more money in the way that it should, right? And that kind of financial restructuring is something that companies obviously start to look at every time there is a crisis. On the people side, and I'm now speaking on the right hand side of the page, I think, Sankalp, you started when you were introducing Reciprocity, you were talking quite a bit about well-being, right? And I think first and foremost, COVID is a health crisis, right? which means first and foremost, if there is a CEO's or an entrepreneur's headspace, it is going towards um, employee well-being, employee value proposition. It is going towards, hang on, are my people in the right headspace? Because if they're not going to be able to do what my business wants them to do, right? And again, I think working remotely, look at what we are doing this morning. We are all kind of, virtually dialed into this meeting. We're all getting our stuff done. It is an efficient way of doing it. But then, once things do go, once we are truly in the post-COVID era, will work continue to go back to what it was, or there is some kind of a holy grail of part digital, part human that we have achieved now, right? So all of those are things that will impact people. It will impact human beings. Um, Sticking with the same theme around, how do businesses respond, here on the right hand side of the page, and I wouldn't necessarily go through each one of them, but is just how globally companies have responded, right? And these are, like I said, companies large and small. You have, your high tech giants, all the way through to, the MSME sector, which is how have small businesses responded, people with businesses with, anywhere close to from 5 to 500 employees. How have they responded? How are they thinking about their partnerships, their digital journey, their kind of diversification of portfolio? And again, different organizations have deployed different kinds of strategies, but it's all in a way to close the gap between where they want to be in the future and where they are today, right? um, Moving on then, and again, these are, and maybe this page I will touch upon some specific examples, but there are primarily three things that are happening right now, and this is where I'd encourage you guys to think about your own business. Some of you might be in the cost optimization phase, right? This has happened, this is not pleasant, we need to rethink how we manage our costs, right? Some of you will be in the driving efficiency space, right? So going back to Tushar's example of, we don't think we are working efficiently as an organization because the employees are not being productive. I, as Tushar, am not getting the right kind of bandwidth to do the right things. And then the business itself, the processes themselves are not efficient. Um, and then the kind of the third bucket in which people are responding and going from return from COVID to reinventing because of COVID is the reconfiguration, right? So let's have a rethink of, who are we? What do we do as a business? What should we be doing as a business? Where do we go next, right? Which is probably where Aman's journey is right now. Um, I think the point here is there are some things that fall squarely in the HR, people, workforce kind of setting, which is where, a lot of people have had to let people go. Production has been down, productivity has been down. How do we think about having the right number of people doing the right kind of jobs at the right time, right? And I know it seems very simplistic, and a lot of you, if you introspect, you would just look at your own businesses and you'll go, yeah, I mean, everyone in my business is doing the right things at the right time and producing the right kind of output, whatever it is. Um, I think where we probably need to introspect deeper um, is it the legacy that we are following, right? And I did a very similar session for EO, which is quite an organization like yours, actually. Um, and a lot of the times, the question I would ask is, are we doing things because that's the only way we've done things, right? Do we follow a certain set of processes because, yeah, I mean, it's always been done like that. My business is now 10 years old, we've always done it like that. And I think the question to ask therefore becomes, if something is being done in 10 steps, is it the most effective and the efficient way of doing it, right? If not, you need to ask yourselves, why do we do step 4? Hang on, if it doesn't add any value to the customer, if it doesn't tick off a regulatory box, if it does not impact my employee, why do we do it that way, right? And that's the conversation that when you start in that optimizing cost plus driving efficiencies, Those are the kind of questions entrepreneurs have been asking themselves. There's a lot of value chain reconfiguration, which again goes back to, in my business, if I just break the whole business down into its constituent value steps, am I creating value in the right way in every step of the way, right? To produce either a particular output, so in Aman's case, furniture, or in Ritesh's case, it's the US doctors and revenue side of their cash flow. Am I generating value in the way it should be generated, right? Um, and then I think there's a whole amount of just rethink your organization, just rethinking, um, are the functions divided right? Is the other teams divided right? Are people doing what I expect them to do? So as an example, that point that Aman was making about Tushar's business on, um, Tushar is getting sucked into the day to day, the operational, right? Whereas what you would want the entrepreneur to do is stay at the strategic level. The day to day tactical operational problem solving shouldn't actually be Tushar's job, right? It should actually come from the one level down, because you have developed them in a way, or perhaps even a level below them. So, in pure HR terms, we call this working at level. So I think it's a very, it's almost a very telling question. And I ask that question to myself often in my consulting job, that um, am I working at level? Which means if I'm not, if I'm perhaps working below my level, which means doing things that I should not be doing as an associate partner at EYP. Um, why am I doing that? Is that because A, I have not developed people below me in a way that they can take on that burden? Is it B, I do not have the right number of people? I'm resource short. I don't have the right people to do it. And therefore, I'm getting sucked into that day to day and I'm doing the jobs that I shouldn't be doing. So I think what is quite often required, and because we are so busy going with the flow, we almost tend to overlook it, is, are we all at any given time in the organization, whether it's 5 people or 500, are people working at the level at which they should be working at? Working above level means you're ready for a promotion. And I don't know, you guys are all CEOs, so I don't know where you'll go from here. But at any given point, I think the sort of the stepping back question to always ask yourselves is, um, am I spending time doing the things that an entrepreneur should be doing, a CEO should be doing, or am I spending time doing things for which I had hired that guy or that woman, right? um so let me just move us along, and I'm keen to get some questions from you guys as well, especially on how do we translate our business plan into a people plan. But here are just some numbers to essentially suggest that a lot of the times an underdeveloped people plan, right? So we're there as a CEO, we've decided what we want to do. Here's our 3-year plan. Here are our business metrics. Here are the KPIs that we want to achieve as a company. And then we never take the effort to, and I'm obviously overgeneralizing this, but we never take the effort to cascade that down in a meaningful way so that the last person in the organization also understands what is his or her role in meeting those strategic objectives. So I think while it might seem like it's an HRE thing, and I'm sure Saloni will tell us more on these kinds of questions that probably come to her. A lot of CEOs, a lot of businesses, a lot of business leaders tend to look at HR as what HR department does, right? Or people strategy is what my HR manager will produce. I think the big folly in that is you will only be able to meet your business goals when you have been able to break it down for each individual, right? And say, here are my 20 people, this is what I'm trying to do. If I now break that down into what does that mean for the 20th person who joined last month, I should have that kind of clarity, right? And this is where big to small to medium size, all kinds of businesses just um, are often ill-equipped, right? They're often it's an underwhelming amount of effort that they spend on their workforce planning. Um, and what is this workforce planning? I think again, as many of you probably already do it in some way, shape, or form. I think the idea is to understand what skills, again, I will, if there's one thing you can take away from these 20 minutes of me talking, is skills are more important than jobs. So every time you look at, I need an HR manager, I need a marketing associate, I need a supply chain expert, I need a CFO in Tushar's case, I need, every time you look at these kinds of jobs, always think about, if I were to break it down into skills, how would I do that? Because remember, skills can be repositioned, reimagined to give you more value in the future. If you hire a person, say this marketing associate, right? You've hired a marketing associate, you hired him or her to do that specific job. Come another crisis, you can't reposition that person, you can't reposition the skills that they have to do something else for you, because you've kind of pigeonholed them into, here is what you're going to do, these are the 7 sort of roles and responsibilities and tasks for you, and your job starts and ends there. Whereas what you want is, you want them to be able to take more ownership, you want them to be able to say, hang on, I am, yes, a marketing associate, but I have dabbled with sales as well. So when there is a need, I can spend 25% of my time assisting with sales strategy, assisting with some kind of pricing strategy, why not, right? But we traditionally always look at people in their job descriptions, and that's why we are never able, we fail to harness the skills that they might have otherwise, right? So I think in the first step, um, all of us need to really take a step back and think about, what skills do we actually need to meet our business strategy, right? Skills from yourself as CEOs, as business owners, but also skills from your people, right? Then we need to think about, all right, now if this is the skill set that we demand at various levels in the organization, what is our supply looking like, right? How do we get these skills, and then how many, or what capacity, or how much do we need, right? And at the cusp of each of these questions is where you'll find your sweet spot in terms of, this is the right number of people doing the right thing at the right time, with me as the business owner taking a back seat and only focusing on strategy. That's when you will get rid of that, that day to day, getting sucked into meetings, getting sucked into challenges, everything gets escalated to the business owner. Sir, this has gone wrong, ma'am, that is not working. That's not your job, right? So every time you're getting involved in those kind, and this happens, trust me, this happens with super duper large organizations as well. I remember servicing as a consultant the biggest pharmaceutical company in India, right? Um, they are present in 65 countries. They are, gosh, back then they were, I think, 20,000 people in the country and roughly an equal number overseas. And their CEO, I still remember, this was when I used to work at BCG, and their CEO came to us as BCG and said, there's something wrong with my organization. We have 40,000 people. It feels like everything, all the buck stops with me for some reason, right? Which is a good thing from an ownership standpoint. But he said, I attend all meetings, all CXO meetings, all departmental meetings, all sales meetings, quarterly, monthly, weekly, all of that. And that's clearly an issue, right? For a company of that size, if the board and the CEO and the CXOs are attending each and every meeting, there's a problem, right? So, what is the problem here? It's a problem of governance, it's a problem of the right operating model for the company. So, if I scale that issue right back down to relatively smaller organizations in size and scale, the problem still remains the same. The job of the leaders is to think ahead, not to solve today's problem. And that can only happen if you surround yourselves with people who have the right kind of skills, right? And then, just very quickly, how do you do that? And, this is a fairly consultancy page, so apologies. But I think the way to do that is, step one, even understand what is not working well, right? Where is it that I even need support from a people standpoint? Plot your organization. So that chart on top left that you see is, whether it's 10 people or 200, plot your organization and think about, here's the between me and the last person in the organization, there are hypothetically 5 layers, right? If these are the 5 layers, are they the right 5 layers to have in the first place? Why do I have a manager reporting into a manager, reporting into a senior manager, reporting into where I am like 10 people, right? There itself, there's a clear issue, right? If you are 200 people or if you're 500 people, and again, I think, when I was talking to Kanchan about this session, a lot of the times this question of unskilled, semi-skilled workforce came up because for quite a few of you, there's a lot of semi-skilled workforce. I think the question there still is the same. If you have that unskilled, semi-skilled, blue-collar workforce who's been there doing the same thing for 15 years, I would actually, almost do some mirror gazing and say, why is it that that person has not been able to move up in 15 years? Why is it that, the person's doing the same thing for 15 years, perhaps a bit more efficiently, of course, because, we are human beings, we are smart, right? We learn how to do things and learn how to do them better over time. But have I not been able to, as the CEO, show a pathway, which is a career pathway? And I'm sure to some of you, it'll be like, that's blue collar workforce, Avantika. What kind of career pathway are you talking about? I beg to differ, right? I genuinely feel there are people who will need um, to be shown what's in it for them, to be shown, and Sankalp, I'm conscious of time. I will shut up in 1 minute. To be
Sorry for
shown,
that, but
there are people who need to be shown, if they continue to do the job right, here's what's in store for them. They could perhaps become the head of that unit of manufacturing. They could become, and again, I don't think qualifications and education and all that sort of stuff should limit it because they now have the right kind of experience. So I think what I would really encourage you all to do is um, just plot your organization. Again, if it's 10 people or 200, irrespective, think about between you and that last person, how many levels do you have? How have you designed your organization across different functions? Then think through what you will need in the future and how far away from that are you. So do almost like a skills mapping, that to be able to survive another COVID, God forbid, but to be able to survive another crisis, this is what I will need, right? This is the kind of skills I will need in my people. And then work backwards from there to say, if that's what I need, how far am I? If I need to get to point B and I'm at point A, what is the distance between point A and B, and how do I get there, right? And that's going to give you your solutions, which will hopefully get you to a point where you can say, right now, working at level, this is what everybody in the organization needs to do to get to that point. So let me just pause here, and I'm sure, both from please feel free to reach out to me. I mean, if there's anything I can do at a personal level to just sort of think through, to perhaps challenge you, and also ask some difficult questions, I'd be very happy